From Psalm 57, it says, "Have mercy on me, O God, have mercy on me, for in you my soul takes refuge. I will take refuge in the shadow of your wings until the disaster has passed. I cry out to God Most High, who fulfills His purpose for me. He sends from heaven and saves me, rebuking those who hotly pursue me. God sends His love and His faithfulness. I am in the midst of lions. I lay among ravenous beasts, men whose teeth are spears and arrows, whose tongues are sharp swords. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth. They spread a net for my feet. I was bowed down in distress. They dug a pit in my path, but they have fallen into it themselves. My heart is steadfast, O God. My heart is steadfast. I will sing and make music. Awake my soul, awake harp and lyre. I will awaken the dawn. I will praise you among the nations. I will sing of you among the peoples. For great is your love, reaching to the heavens. Your faithfulness reaches to the skies. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth." In this psalm, we can see David declaring how his heart is so steadfast. Actually, in verse 7, twice he mentioned, "My heart is steadfast, O God, my heart is steadfast." And he even goes to say that with this steadfast heart, yung payapang puso niya, he can even intensely worship God, even singing new songs to God. In the following verses, he further says, because of this peace that he experienced in his heart, he would even wake up early in the morning. He will command his soul to wake, energize his body, so that even his sleepy body will really worship God intensely, even before the sun rises. And you may say, normal kay David yun. It's David. After all, David is known to be a man after God's own heart. What can we expect? Can we expect less from David to really worship God like this? Singing new songs to God, rising up early in the morning, creating new song, new music to the Lord, and even making use of all the things in where he is as instruments for worship. Normal kay David yun, sabi natin. Yes, we can expect that of David. I suppose any one of us can really say, tama lang gawin ni David yan. But if we will study further Psalm 57, we will discover that David's condition, when he's saying, "My heart is steadfast," that he is even able to worship God, is not the ideal place for him and even situation for him to really worship God that way. The background of Psalm 57 can be found in 1 Samuel, chapter 22, 1-2, and chapter 24, 1-2. David left Gath, and he escaped to the cave of Adullam. When his brothers and father's household heard about it, that David ran away from Saul, yung father's household niya heard about it, and they went down with him there. So verse 2, all those who were distressed, because during the time of Saul, many people are disgruntled, distressed with how Saul is leading them. So they gathered around David, they went to him where he ran away from Saul, and he became their leader. About 400 men were with him. 1 Samuel 24, after Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told David is in the cave in the desert of En-Gedi. So Saul took 300 chosen men from all Israel, set out to look for David and his men near the crags of the wild goats. We see David running away, escaping from Saul because Saul threatened to kill him. Saul knew that David would be his successor, the threat to his throne. Saul wanted to cling on to this position as king. So, to preserve his hold on the throne, one thing must be done to remove the threat. Ano yun? Patayin si David. Because David knew of this great threat for his life, he flees from Saul and found himself cornered in the cave of Adullam. And to make matters worse, sinamahan nga siya, his brothers, his fathers, and 400 men who were distressed or in debt or discontented joined him. Alam natin, when the Bible talk about 400 men, it did not mention that these 400 men traveled with their families. So it must be more than 400 men who went down to that cave with David. So David was running away, fleeing from Saul, and here is a nation, a barangay, that he must lead disgruntled people. This is the scenario. David was in the cave with 400 men, hindi binilang yung wives. So pwede natin, 1,000 people were with him. But in this situation, malaki pa problema ni David. And let's look one by one at David's problematic condition. So for us to really appreciate, David, where did you get that motivation to worship God? Ang kondisyon ng buhay mo problematic. So let's look at his problematic situation. Verses 1b and verse 3 says here, until the disaster has passed, he is being hotly pursued by his enemy, by Saul and the hundreds of soldiers. So first we will find David finding himself in a disaster situation. So David compared his miserable condition to a disaster that is yet to escalate. Rather than dissipate, for his enemy was hotly pursuing him. And in that cave were his arch enemy Saul and his army of 3,000 men. Meron kayong naging kaaway ng 3,000 na tao? With one intention, just to kill you? David likened this condition to be a storms of destruction, according to ESV translation. So here David was so helpless. Sabi kanina, my heart is steadfast, O God, my heart is steadfast. But his condition is so hurtful. Kaya title natin, Peace of Heart in the Midst of Hurt. The worst thing that David may anticipate to happen is for enemies, ano pwede gawin? They may release wild animals into the cave to devour him. Or to roll fireballs. Marami silang pwedeng gawin. To burn them alive. Or to flood the cave and to drown them all. David, in this condition, can only expect the worst. Hotly in pursuit by his enemy. In deep trouble, inside the cave, there's no way out. How about us? Unang problema pa lang ni David. Have you found yourself, or are you now in this situation? Similar to David. Like passing through a storm with no solution, whether near or far. You can't see any solution. Your health is worsening. Meron ba rito may sakit? Your financial problem is eating you up, yung interest tuloy-tuloy. Or your relationships are breaking. And you ask yourself, when will this disaster end? How can I worship God in this situation? But David here, in this una pa lang ito, declares, my heart is steadfast. My heart is steadfast. Let's look at the other problem ni David. Number one, yung threat of physical and moral obliteration. Verse 4, I am in the midst of lions. Tao yung kaaway niya, si Saul and his enemies, thousands of his enemies. But he regarded these people as his enemies who he likened into lions, ravenous beasts, men whose teeth are spears and arrows, whose tongues are sharp swords. King Saul definitely knows who David was. He devised plans A and B. Yung plan A, so he employed 3,000 men from all Israel to make David sure that David is captured or killed. So this men, kaya sabi dito, being hotly pursued by these fierce men like lions, ravenous beasts. Kaya si David was so troubled. He knows how ferocious these men are. To capture, not just to capture him, not just to kill him simply, but to completely extinguish him. What about the plan B? But David also knew this may be done, but next to impossible, because David is a mighty warrior. But if this will not happen, if my 3,000 men can with all their might capture David, what else can we do? There must be plan B. These men who are so ferocious can kill him, but if they will not be able to kill him, pangalawang plan B is use their tongues as sharp swords to siraan siya, defame him, to slander him, so that even if he would escape the cave and remain alive, he would lose all his reputations and no one would follow him. That's plan B. Have you been in this situation, your life is threatened, or you have been maligned way back home? Hindi ka na makauwi. Pag-uwi mo kasi baka salubungin ka ng sampal ng asawa mo, ng pamilya mo. David here experienced this. And yet, we find him saying, my heart is steadfast. I will worship you, Lord. Ang problema, di ba? When we are experiencing these troubles in life, ayaw na natin mag-church. But here, David, in an unlikely situation, in a cave, not even in a wonderful place like this, worshiping God early in the morning with this number 2 problem in his life. Third, ano yung pangatlong problema ni David? Found no rest from his troubles, from his problems. He lives with his problem day in and day out, 24/7. Verse 4, I am in the midst of lion, I lay. The whole day I would worry my problem, and at night I would lay down with the same problem, only to wake up in the morning, still having the same problem. And the next morning, natulog ako sa problema, I slept on my problem, only to wake up the next morning with an even bigger problem, kung utang ito, nag-interest na. David faced this problem the whole day until evening. Have you been in this problematic condition? Distressed the whole day. You've run out of ideas. You've lost all your energies the whole day. Tapos, the worst is not, si pastor, hirap kang hanapin dahil hindi ka magsamba. Why will I worship the God who said He's so powerful, and yet, ito problema ko. The whole day, 24/7, the whole week, the whole month, isang taon na. 1 year na itong problema, wala akong solusyon. Being hotly pursued, I lay. Kasama ko to pagtulog, pagising. So another, verse 6, David was so heartbroken and depressed. Verse 6, they spread a net for my feet. I was bowed down in distress. They dug a pit in my path. We knew yung status ni David. He served the king faithfully. He was a prominent, successful general of his army. David led the army with zeal, with commitment. He protected the people that he led, the armies that he led. Ano nangyari? He made sure that this armies of mine, after coming from battle, I will lead them, I will bring them back to their own families alive, so that their wives will enjoy having their husbands, their father would enjoy having their fathers, even if they would go to war, I, their general, will protect them. Kaya nga sila buhay. But now, these men who David has devoted himself, his energy, his mind and heart to lead them and to protect them, are the ones who turn their back on him, even treating him worstly. Have you been betrayed? Ang sakit nun, di ba? Ang sakit. Have you been hurt by people who you don't expect to abandon you? Padala ka ng pera sa bansa natin. Wala ka ng pera pala, inabandon ka na. Ginagasto sa ibang pamilya yung perang pinadala mo. Sakit. But here, with this condition, ano sabi ni David? My heart is steadfast. I will make music. Surprisingly, this story did not end this. Kahit na masakit. Siguro, if this thing would happen to us, yung 4 na problema niya na yan, we won't go to church anymore. Maybe we would backslide. What's the use of going to church? What's the use of continuing to have this relationship with this God when all the problems I'm having, day in and day out, I'm praying for you, I'm asking for a solution, and nothing happens. Huwag na lang ako magsamba. Iba si David eh. Pero teka muna. If this thing happened to David, and the result was the unexpected, normally we would expect him to, wag na lang, to throw the towel. Ayoko na. I don't want anymore. Backslide na lang ako, balik na lang ako sa dati kong pananampalataya. The difficulties, the depressing condition he found himself in, we can also see him in that condition, hindi bumigay. He continued on to serve God, to be faithful to God, even to worship God. And we see him declaring from verses 5 to 11, he was declaring, be exalted, O God. A guy worshiping God intensely with the condition that we've just looked at. So ang tanong natin doon, what happened? How can this person have peace in his heart in the midst of this hurt? David no doubt still in the condition, yung problematic condition, nang sinabi niya yun. Paano nangyari yun? So let's explore again Psalm 57. Balikan natin. So ano yung unang nakita? In the midst of his hurtful situation, David did not lose his sight on the bigness of his God. He kept his high view on God. Ano sabi niya? With all of this problem, I still cry out to God, who I declare to be the most high God. David's enemy, Saul, is the mightiest and most powerful man. Saul, the king of Israel, physically, he was really big and tall. Remember when the prophet Samuel, he did the Hebrew people, the Hebrew male, when they clamor for a king to reign them, a human person to reign them as king. So ano ginawa ni Samuel? He asked all the men to line up. And in that lineup of men, nandun si Saul. Saul was there ahead, taller from the rest. 1 Samuel 9:2. A very impressive young man, without equal among the Israelites. He was a head taller than the rest. Saul is a Benjamite. Alam niyo yung Benjamite, mighty warrior? Yung mga Benjamites daw, when they would shoot their arrows, so they would use 2 arrows in shooting an enemy or a target. Isushoot niya yung unang arrow, he will release the first arrow, and as soon as that first arrow hit the bullseye, he will release another arrow, and this another arrow will hit the tail of the first arrow, breaking the first arrow in half. Galing. Ganun na Benjamite. Powerful, influential. The king, mas matangkad sa kanya. Nevertheless, okay, malaki kang problema. But my God is bigger than you. So if you view your God to be bigger than your problems become smaller. And no matter how big your problem is, the reason why, number 1, David was able to have peace with God. Malaki ang problema. Malaki Diyos ko sa iyo eh. You are a big problem, but my God is bigger and mightier than you. So, sige lang problema. Diyan ka lang problema kasi nandito rin ang Diyos ko. Whenever David was confronted like this by an adversary bigger than him, he would recall the times when his big God would be with him against the bears and the lions that he defeated with his bare hands by the power of God. Also, yung triumph niya over the giant Goliath, di ba? With 1 stone, he declared that I will defeat you in the name and power of my God. So, with this view of God, your God is bigger and mightier than your greatest problem. Kaya pala, may problema ako. Walang solusyon. Pero katabi ko yung magsosolusyon yan. When will the solution come? I don't mind anymore. So long as the one who will give me the solution is I am assured that He is capable of giving me the solution. Even if the solution is not yet here, I can still worship God because God is here with me. Number 2, he is so convinced that God Himself will fulfill His purpose for his life. To God who fulfills His purpose for me. He was in the cave. So, all indication points out to what might happen that he may end his life in the cave. Di ba? Nandun ka, actually, the story doesn't tell us how David escaped. If you will read the whole account, makikita mo na lang, you will discover, natapos this account ended with no clarification how David escaped. But we know that after this, David was outside of the cave. Whatever happened, we don't know. The Bible does not say. But after this, where will we find David? In the throne. He was well aware of the anointing he receives from the prophet Samuel to be the future king of Israel. So he knew God's purpose for him to lead Israel as their king and not to die in the cave. Therefore, David knows his life will not end miserably in that cave because God's purpose for him is not to disgracefully kill him in that situation, but there to lift him up and to fulfill His glorious purpose for him. So if Saul's purpose for David is to end his life doon sa kuweba, David knew. Yan ang purpose mo sa akin, demonyo ka. But God's purpose for me is different. The confident assurance that Saul's purpose will not prevail over God's purpose for his life gave David that peace of heart in the midst of that hurt. He may not know what time or how or when that would happen, but he knows with certainty that he will surely get past that challenging episode in his life because that is not where God purposed for him to end his life. However difficult your predicament is now, mahirap ang kinadaanan mo, God's purpose for you will prevail. He will bring you from glory to glory. Sabi mo, hindi ko alam paano ko mababayaran ang utang ko. God's purpose for you is to be debt-free. However that will happen, ask God. Consult your pastor. Go for counseling. Remember this, if you're in a difficult predicament, that's not the end of your life. God has purpose for your life. Kung hindi mo man madiscover ngayon, seek Him. Kaya pala, even in this cave na para dito ako mamamatay, magsasamba pa rin ako kasi David knew his life will not end in that cave. Number 3, David is certain that God will personally deliver him from danger. He sends from heaven and saves me, rebuking those who hotly pursue me. God sends His love and His faithfulness. Even with the unsurmountable problems facing him, David found peace in his heart with God because he knew that even if Saul would put together all his machineries to defeat him, 3,000 men, 4,000, lahat na buong bansa, padala mo rito. My God will send His help from where? From heaven, from His throne room of grace. Kaya nga in the New Testament, we are being encouraged, come to me, those of you who are heavily laden. Go before the throne room of grace. You will find favor from God. And where God will get the help that you need is from His throne room of grace. How can you go wrong? Hintay lang. Pag madali. Si David was there. Sige, the help is not here yet. But I know God is sending help from heaven. God Himself will send from heaven all that is needed to save us. God's heavenly army will save David and will save us from this whatever situation we are in right now. God Himself will even rebuke, according to the passage, to stop His enemies. Nangyari na sa inyo yun? Parang you did nothing to solve your problem and all of a sudden you realize, where's my problem? You tire yourself to death trying to find solution to the problem. And when you rested in the presence of God, God gave you the wisdom. Ganito lang pala kasimple ang solusyon. He will send from heaven. When God saves, He saves personally. And He saves excessively. When God saves, He saves parang overkill. From heaven, imagine, He will save you. Fourth is David relied on God's covenant with him. God sends His love and His faithfulness. Whenever God's love and faithfulness is mentioned in the Old Testament, it talks about God's covenant with His people. Tandaan natin yon. Love and faithfulness. Love and faithfulness, that's covenant, agreement ng Diyos sa tao. From the first time siya nakipag-covenant kay Adam and Eve, kay Adam hanggang kay Abraham, hanggang sa mga sumunod, kay David. Love and faithfulness talks of God's covenant with His people, discounting the fact that us who He covenanted with, alam ng Diyos, God knew we will fail on our side of the covenant, and yet He still made that covenant with us, because even if we will not fulfill our side of the bargain, God in His faithfulness will fulfill His kinumit na obligation to this covenant. So si David, he was so peaceful in his heart, even with the problem, because he knows, he is assured of the victory in the hands of his enemies because he has a covenant with God. Our covenant with Jesus, the new covenant in His blood assures us. Our covenant with Jesus assures us that whatever trouble we experience in this life, we have a covenant with our God who will make sure that we will overcome. Because David knew that even if he is unfaithful, he has a faithful God who has covenanted with him. Our assurance of victory comes from the certainty that we are the covenant people of God. Huwag mong kakalimutan yan, kapatid. In times of trouble, in times of difficulty, in times when you think you are all alone, that your family has abandoned you, that there's nothing anymore with you but yourself, you have still God with you. He has covenanted with you. You are His covenant people. Even if all else fail, even if your human friends and families has forsaken you, God will never forsake you because He has covenanted with you. Our assurance. Itong assurance si David eh. Iwanan man ako nitong making mga kaaway. They betrayed me, they abandoned me. But I have a God who will not abandon or betray me. Finally, David knows the most important part of him is firmly secured by God. Verse 1, balikan natin yung verse 1. Have mercy on me, O God. Have mercy on me, for in you my soul takes refuge. Hindi ba kayo nagtatanong, why of the armor of God in the New Testament, the helmet that guards our mind is the helmet of salvation to assure us that we are secured in our relationship with God so long as we have Him as our Lord and Savior. Kaya nga, David can resign himself to the eventualities in the hands of his enemy. Saul and his armies are outside the cave waiting for all opportunities to take him, to kill him. But he would sleep on his problems, hounding him. Morning would rise up, ganun din ang problema. Even before the sunrise, anong gagawin niya? Magsasamba na siya. He would compose songs kasi alam niya that in that challenging presence and circumstance, makapayapa ang puso niya because he knew that even if Saul would take everything from him, physically, mapatayin siya, or his reputation, his soul is intact with God. Kaya nga sabi, what good would it be for a man if he gains the whole world but loses soul? Kay David, sige na, bahala ka na, Saul. I leave it up to you and to your armies. Do what you want. I can resign to this situation. You can kill me. Dito na ako sa cave. Paghintay na lang ako kung anong gawin nyo. Because I know, even if you will succeed in killing me, defaming me, when I wake up, I will be my soul that will live forever is secured in God. The goal of our faith is the salvation of our soul. 1 Peter 9. So minsan, we value these earthly things so much. Okay lang yan. But minsan, itong problema, we are not able to really give God the best worship because we lose material things. Our health is threatened. Yung mga bagay sa mundo, parang mawawala. We don't want to worship God because hindi ako napopromote. Nasa Singapore ako, hindi ako makaipon. Iniwanan ko na, I left my family back home to provide for them and I am not providing anything for them kasi hirap ang buhay. Huwag na lang ako magsamba. Minsan we gauge our yung intensity and genuineness ng pagsamba sa Panginoon kapag things are happening well physically, materially. Heaven and earth will pass away. Hindi natin hawak yung buhay natin. Ang may hawak sa buhay natin, ang Diyos. And if your soul is secured in God, if you knew in your heart that you have received Jesus as your Lord and Savior, that whenever you die, you will leave this world, you will wake up after this life in heaven with God, enjoying eternity with Him. Will you not, in that reality, worship God if you don't have anything on this world? You may lack so much here. If you have God with you, you have everything. With God, we have peace of heart in the midst of hurt.